On May 10th in 2024, Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania opened their brand new B&M dive coaster, Iron Menace. This Thanksgiving weekend, I got the chance to ride it, and this is my review on it. Iron Menace is Dorney Park's first coaster investment in 15 years since they opened Possessed back in 2008. Now this coaster is a B&M dive coaster standing at a max height of 160 feet. Now the drop height on Iron Menace isn't the same as the lift hill height. The drop height is 152 feet and you'll reach a top speed of 64 miles per hour. Iron Menace is located in the back corner of the park, so if you want to get to it, you're going to enter through front gate and turn to the left. Then you'll reach that back corner where Possessed is and you made your way to Iron Menace. Once you reach the section for Iron Menace, you're going to immediately notice the factory themed station. When you enter the queue line, you're going to walk through this little themed area, and closer to the back, there is more queue line, but if it's a dead day, you're going to walk right up the stairs to the platform. From here, you're board your 21 passenger train in rows 1, 2, or 3. Personally, for me, I think row 1 is the best place to sit. Once everyone has taken their seats and restraints have been checked and the ride is ready to go, you're going to dispatch out of the station and head right up into the lift hill. From this point, you're going to ascend up your 160-foot tall lift hill, and right away as you crest the top, you're going to be on your holding point. Once you reach the top of the lift hill, you're going to start dangling over your 95-degree drop. And after a couple seconds, the chain lets go and you go into your layout. The first element you're going to go into is an Immelman. An Immelman is an element that you can find on every single dive coaster ever built. And it's usually the first element right after the drop on all of them. Immelmans can be pretty good elements depending on the ride, but I wouldn't say it's anything too special. And right after that Immelman, you're going to rise up into a 0G roll, which you can also find on some other dive coasters. This element can be pretty fun on this ride if you're sitting on one of the edge seats. And after that 0G roll, you're going to go into your next element, an inclined loop. This is definitely the most forceful part of this ride. If you don't know what an inclined loop is, basically you take a vertical loop and put it on an angle. And after that inclined loop, you go into your fourth and final inversion for the ride, a corkscrew. Again, another element that's not really too special. After that corkscrew, you'll head into a small helix, which takes you into the final brake run. Now that I've gone over the entire layout for this ride, let's take a look at what the trains are like. Starting off by looking at the restraints on the trains, this train does have the vest restraints which B&M dive coasters have had for the last couple of years. However, while the restraints are the same as others, the train design is actually slightly different than other dive coasters. While most dive coasters you see built nowadays are either 8 seats across or even 6 seats across, this train features 7 seats across. And while the number of seats may have changed on a dive coaster, the number of rows hasn't. This train still features 3 rows as other dive coasters do. And with Iron Menace being a shorter ride, this ride only features 2 trains. And now that we've taken a look at the layout and the trains, I'm going to get into what I actually think about this ride. And I have to admit right now that I am not the biggest fan of dive coasters. I think they're good investments for smaller parks such as Dorney Park like Iron Menace is. But for major parks, I'm not the biggest fan of them. Saying that, I do still think that Iron Menace is a fun ride and a great addition for a park like Dorney. The park really needed something like this, and this is a one-of-a-kind coaster for the Pennsylvania area, as Hershey Park doesn't have a dive coaster. Although I do think Iron Menace is a fun ride, I wouldn't say it's close to being one of my favorites. It's not even my favorite ride in the park at Dorney, but for what Dorney was given, I think it's really good for them. Now, what do I think of the layout of this ride? The 95-degree drop is really good, especially in the back row. You can't see the track. Even in the front row, you can't see the track when you're hanging over the edge. But it does give some pretty good airtime on the way down. But other than that, the Immelman, the 0G roll, the corkscrew at the end, the helix, is all stuff I've experienced on other dive coasters. The one thing I will say is the incline loop. The incline loop is by far one of my favorite elements throughout this entire ride. And it's definitely the most forceful part of this ride, as I said before. The only issue that I have with this ride, which is a minor thing, is the rattle it has. Iron Menace has a pretty noticeable rattle, and near the end of the ride, at the end of the helix, there is a random jolt. Now, it didn't affect me too much, but it was very noticeable. But other than that rattle, there was really no other issue I had with the ride. It's comfortable. It's a pretty fun ride for what it is. And there was no wait for it, so I couldn't tell what waiting in line was like, but I'm sure it can't be that bad. The next thing to talk about is the theming for this ride. Personally, I'm not too big on theming. I don't care if a ride has theming or if it doesn't, but all I have to say is the theming for this ride is amazing. From the station to the queue line to even the haunt maze they have specifically for this ride that was also new for 2024. All of it is fantastic. Dorney Park wanted to go all out for this new ride, and they executed that perfectly. But with that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.